Skyline and I decided that before joining the others up top, we would first be heading to the generator room. We needed to ensure that even if 42 murdered us all, that machine would never bring harm to the wasteland again. The loud thumbing of the large spark transformers passed into a dull hum as I wound my way down a rusty staircase that groaned on every hoof step. Finally at the bottom, Skyline landed in front of me and hooked her hooves through the crane on the bulkhead. With a quick torque and a loud screech, the door swung open to the power control room. What greeted me was not what I had expected. The room itself was no bigger than the inside of the garage back home, even matching the color of the flaking 200-year-old paint. A long bank of brightly lit panels stretched along the back walls that I assumed controlled the power. But the most surprising thing was the 4 thick copper tubes that each ran out of the wall and into the old equipment. Wow, these are some pretty small generators. How do they generate enough to run this place? I walked up closer to the bank of brightly glowing switches, knobs, and dials that I knew I probably shouldn't touch. My ears perked quickly as the sound of hoofsteps coming down the stairwell caught our attention. Whoever's fool thought that it would be a good idea to break into my power room is going to be sorely sorry when I get down there. The voice of an angry mayor called into the room, beating out the sounds of equipment that was making by far, and implying that we had not been invited. We might have actually had to explain ourselves. Quit your whining, Caliper. It's probably just those folks who are coming. The second voice was closer down and a lot rougher, speaking with experience and authority. I told you to not play into that last round. When the pair walked through the doors, they were not what I had expected to see. The first was a zebra stallion, which, seeing as it was Friendship City, wasn't odd. The odd thing was actually what he was wearing. The dark blue stable barding gave off the sheen of a well-kept and washed piece of clothing. The big, blocky yellow numbers on his back told me that it originated from Stable 26. The green shine of light emitted from a pip-buck he wore on his front right leg, making me wonder if he could give me some tips on how to use my own. See? What did I tell you? It's just the folks we're supposed to give it something to. He smiled wearily and walked over to me, holding his hoof out. The name's Zeke, and it's a pleasure. Mr. Backlash. I took his hoof and shook it. Going limp as the second thing to enter the room was a more intriguing puzzle than Zeke had been. The tan hide that nearly matched my own was worn by a buffalo, complemented by her own Stable 26 barding and pip-buck. Her lime-green eyes glared at me in suspicion as she pushed her way in, nearly big enough that she didn't fit through the doorframe. I'm sorry if I've given this a lot. I'm sorry if you've gotten this a lot. But are you two from Stable 26, or did you just trade for the outfits? Caliper sighed out and pushed her way past Sky to get to the console. Great. More intolerant assholes. Just 'cause we're wearing something nice doesn't mean we had to take it from someone. Hey now, you never said anything of that sort. Zeke surprisingly backed me up. I mean, I truly meant no offense, but I probably could have chosen my words better. And to answer y'all's questions, we aren't, but Stable 26 up north just opened up last week, and we got back from helping them strip their stable to build a settlement where they can stay. When we finished, they gave us this barding and our very own pip-bucks as thanks for our hard work. Dismantling an entire stable sounds like a lot of work. Skyline crossed her hooves and sounded genuinely impressed. Most of the stables that had been opened so far were all designed to be dismantled and repurposed to rebuild the old world. But something designed to hold at least 500 ponies meant that it would be one hell of a task. It was, and just yesterday we arrived back for some much-needed rest, and not an hour later we were told you're going to be needing our help with something having to do with turning off the tidal generator system. He smiled and looked back at me. So, what exactly can we do you for? I need access to your tidal generator systems, specifically your hydroelectric magnet regulator. As I spoke, I took it by their confused expressions that they hadn't actually been told what we needed. And that thing's name was too damn long, and a pain to remember. You can't blame me for not remembering it. Skyline hopped in, trying to help speed this awkward task along. So if you could just go over to them and grab it, that'd be great. She pointed her hoof to one of the pipes on the wall. Fucking fantastic. Caliper sounded as if we just asked her to join in on the front lines of the assault against 42. The amount of anger in her voice was surprising for as little as it was said. Maybe Buffalo are just quick to anger. The last couple I've met pretty much fit the bill, but I was hoping that it was just brought on by some factor of wasteland living. Now we have to take the ferry again! Wait, what? To my understanding, normally stable dwellers have a better education than most of us wastelanders. But did she not know what a ferry was? But they're right there. I joined Sky in pointing, finding it annoying when Zeke started to laugh softly. Y'all know those aren't generators. Those are the bilge pumps. Why, if they weren't constantly running, we'd all be under the water right now. My mind went blank as I looked around the room. It was just those 4 pipes in that control panel, and nowhere could I see where generators would lead into here. No, the generators can't be built in here. The current is too wild this far out in the harbor. Y'all never get any real power through here, so they built them a bit further in. The gears in my head spun up, grinding together as they fed me what I didn't want to hear slowly. Further in. Like, how much further? The information was kicked into my head by the gears, making me angry I had never even considered the connection. Well, they built him right into the base of the Buckland Bridge, and tied it directly into the statue. Pretty smart work, if you ask me. He sounded proud for answering, but he lacked the perspective I had. I knew that 42 already had the regulator by now. It had to have been why she chose that as her final battleground. You've got to be shitting me. Skyline found the will to express exactly what I was feeling at that moment. This doesn't change anything. I put my hoof up to her. Thankfully, she didn't fly into a rant. We still need it. Maybe instead of working their way up, Casserole and Longbow can work their way down from the entranceway. They can destroy it while 42 is busy dealing with us up top. What makes you so sure she'll even be up there? Sky threw back at me in a tone of annoyance. A tone I would have shared if I didn't already see an issue like this coming up. Because I'll be up there, I fired back, shifting her expression to one of worry. I reached my forehoof out and watched as she grabbed it, pulling herself into it warmly. Because we'll be up there. Ahem. Caliper cleared her voice. Did you still want to do this, or do you two need to get a room? She's my sister! I yelled out in frustration, at the same moment that Skyline mirrored my complaint. Seriously, I thought that I was past this. Not judging who you love, just... Caliper smartly remarked before getting cut off. That's enough now. These folk don't poke fun. And making little quibs like that ain't gonna help you look any better when you already don't want them to comment about you. Zeke stepped up and hoofed through his saddlebag, pulling out a long gray wire. He hooked one end into the large control panels, and then trailed the other end to his pip-buck, pressing it into the connector slot with a soft click. Normally, something like this would take a few days to prep, but since we got fancy computer thingies on a hoof, and I figured out how to use it this morning, the process should only take a moment. How do pip-bucks help with old equipment like this? I shrugged and looked down at mine, unhappy to see that sometime in the last few minutes the vacuum tube burnt out. Looks like my next stop is the markets for a replacement. There's no way I'd go into a fight with 42 without this thing, even if it hasn't really helped me so far. You can use the audio override to access anything. In this case, it's the safety disconnect to the bridge side of the connection. He looked down at the small arcanotech device, twisting it as it emitted a familiar set of beeps. But in using this, there's no guarantee that doing whatever y'all are going to do won't cause a surge and take out the backup generator here in the process. I'm just gonna have to ask that when you're all down there, that you manually open the circuit before you shut down the generator for good. I know how to work an electrical system, but there was something that still didn't make sense to me. What the fuck is an auto override? That made him look at me like I was crazy. How do you have a pip lock and not know about it? It was in the tutorial. Yeah, I can guarantee my tutorial was different. I held my pink, shoddy-looking one up and shook it. Not to mention, I'm not a very code-savvy pony. Gee, I never would have guessed. He rolled his eyes and smiled. Regardless, it's a lifesaver when you can just plug it into a machine and get overriding control of it. Well, as long as it's not got software incompatibilities or passwords to get through. A loud beep came from his pip-buck, drawing both our attentions to it. Well, that's it. You should probably be able to remove the part now without killing yourself off with feedback. Thank you. I know it's going to be tough, but I assure you it's going to be for the best. I nodded and turned to leave. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Caliper spoke up. I don't care what you assume. The second you cut off power here, it's going to be a nightmare to get anything up and running. This is if the pumps aren't needed long enough so that we can even attempt to rig up a replacement. As far as I'm concerned, you're going to owe me for this shit. Calm down now, Caliper. This was a favor from the city council. Zeke had the look of wanting to defend me, but I'm guessing that, unlike me, he didn't know how to handle an angry buffalo. What do you want, then? I asked, not wanting to waste any more time. I just have to add a request to the list of shit I have to do that I've been neglecting for nearly my whole month-long adventure. Well, for starters, you could get my pinky back. She smirked, glad to see we had gotten down to business. If it hadn't been for what she'd asked for, I might have argued against it being the first thing on her list. Some pony stole it early this morning, and I'm fairly certain from how they smelled that they're just going to sell it for drugs. So you might try old Miss Leek's shop in the market. Seymour's Herbs. Fine. On second thought, I didn't care for bartering right now. Not to mention it was a fairly simple request, and if it cost too much, I'd just wait until after we get back to do our tasks. At that point, I would actually be able to focus on getting a better deal out of it. Then, if you'll excuse me, I have to get back to fixing this console before it goes out completely. Come back down when you've got it. She smiled and turned around, rousing a sigh from Zeke. You know that thing will never break. I've never seen a console break in my life. Zeke spoke with a tone of clarity and wonder. He liked arcanotech more than most, I guess. It is beyond me why the old world wanted these things to last so long. Never need to replace anything inside them, and they never quit on you. Why not, once in my travels, have I seen this one, and it still isn't lit up and shining? Well, we have. Sky's voice, speaking up, came as a shock while the gears in my head tried to spin up. Sky turned to me with a curious look. While Brass was patching me up after 42 shot me, I noticed that none of the control panels down there were working. Remember? I tried to think back to that moment, but it was all a bit fuzzy. Most likely due to head trauma I had endured, or maybe it was the hits to the head I'd taken that had screwed my memory. Skyline sounded like she was adamant about this, that it was the truth, and honestly, that was all I needed. Well, I'm sure that's the only exception. Caliper spoke up angrily. But unless you get your flank over here, we're risking this to be the first one we've ever seen. I took that as a cue to go and nodded to Zeke. The two of them got down to business, and they certainly made an unassuming pair. But wasn't that what Friendship City was all about? Wasn't this place supposed to be the greatest example of tolerance in the wastes? Some part of me wanted to believe that the residents here cared that 42 was out there and wanted to stand behind me until they saw her stopped. Another part of me knew that I was just grasping at any thought I could that would keep me going about my own battles. And the last part of me just wanted the gears in my head to stop spinning and let me rest until I could take her down. Come on, sis. Let's get to the markets. I sighed as we approached the stairwell. Why couldn't they have a working elevator? After climbing the flights of stairs up to ground level, I was mercifully stopped by Isaac, as he poked his head through the hatch leading outside. Skyline stepped past him and flirted her wings, looking back to me with a soft smile. I'll go check on Carlotta. I'll be back in an hour. She waited for me to give a nod before hopping into the air, taking off into the dark skies, as Isaac hoofed a small jar out of the saddlebags he wore. It was full of tiny blue specks that shimmered in a most particular way, almost reminding me of something as rare as glitter. The shine, however, was different. I wondered if you knew any ponies who could make use of this. I confiscated it earlier from a trader who assured me that it was harmless, but I know better. He hoofed it over to me, shrugging as he sat down. Even if it is harmless like this, it is far too dangerous to keep in a city surrounded by water. Here he was speaking with a note of fear about a jar of glitter, moving it up from a casual curiosity to an interesting puzzle in my mind. I held it close to my face. What is it? He looked surprised by my question. You mean, you've not seen this in your journeys? I was sure that you would recognize Killing Joke when you saw it. He sighed and looked up to the sky, as I tried to process that I had a jar of the most lethal plant in the wasteland sitting in my bag. I had hoped to know if drying it could indeed make it safe, but if it's all the same, I would like you to take it when you leave the city. Quite a few here have had bad runs-in with it, and I fear that they may get angry to know it's being kept around. Speaking of bad run-ins, I watched as he perked his ears and studied me with his eyes. Have you been getting settled in? With as friendly as everyone is, I would hope you haven't had any problems. It's been interesting. The way he spoke had a note of sadness to it. So far, it seems the community is split on their opinion of me. That seemed unlikely, especially in a town like this. What about the other zebras? This is where the problem stems. They know I'm not a normal zebra, and shun me as an evil being. The way he said it, it was like he had already just given up on them. Though there was still hope in his words, and I want to do everything I can to make him settle in. What is it with you zebras and curses? This is cursed, and that's cursed! I laughed, making a smile come across his face. Come on, Isaac. You know the other ponies don't believe a word when it comes to curses. At least I hope they don't. You've got to have found some pony who doesn't care. Half of them think that because the zebra hate me, I'm to be trusted. The enemy idea. The other half think that if the zebra won't take me, then I should be avoided all the time. He scuffed his hoof at the ground. It is, to say the least, disheartening. I thought this place was better than all that. They've always been so nice to me whenever I visited. But then again, I'm a pony. Was that truly the reason, or was it just the fact that I'm a merchant? It is fine. I'm not without acquaintances, and now that you're here, I have even more to be with. He nodded to me and got back up. It is now the end of my shift. Would you like to join me for a drink? I had so much stuff to do to prepare, I didn't really have time for relaxing. Sure. And there I go promising things I shouldn't again. But first I have to head up to the market, so I'll be there in a few, all right? He smiled warmly and headed inside, turning and dashing up the stairs with his ridiculous quirkiness. I stood for a moment in the doorway leading outside, listening to the wind as it howled across the open harbor. The gears in my head were still spinning from earlier, trying to put the pieces into place on a puzzle I had no idea how to solve, or even what triggered it. The one question I wanted on my mind was not what puzzle it was that the gears were putting together, but would it matter at all when it was time for the assault? I decided to get moving and head towards the market, eager to see if I could find a few things for the fight. So up the stairs I climbed, flight after flight. The climb wasn't quite as bad as I remembered it being before, even with my legs protesting. I knew it was just from the taxation of the week. Who knew that all it took for me to get used to, or to get into better shape, was a month of being nearly killed. Although I do have to say it's been the worst weight loss plan I've ever been on. Having climbed to the market level, I twisted open the hatch with my hooves and entered. The whole level was bustling with activity today, with ponies from all over Equestria in shouting matches with shopkeepers for good deals, while others were wildly clanging their wares together to find any buyers at all. The sight was always one that I had normally enjoyed when I came here, finding it the perfect place to make sure my bartering skills were still as good as they could be. I looked around at the shops, finding that a few had changed hooves since I had last been here. I was delighted to see that the shop I was looking for had a large sign hanging over it. Seymour's Herbs had been here the last few years, even though they sold drugs, which is forbidden within the city. The council was half made up of Zeros who shopped there for alchemical ingredients. I trotted up to the front of the stall, swinging my eye across the shelves of dried plants and small vials, stopping when a small pink object caught my attention. The pink mare, with bright blue eyes of Pinkie Pie, peered out at me from behind a row of Dash inhalers, sitting in a clear plastic box. Only for a moment my mind drifted back to the pool, reminding me of exactly what Dash could do. Something like that could be immensely useful in a fight against 42. Addiction would be worth it, if it meant getting the upper hoof in a fight. I smiled and looked down at the old, gray-maned mare in a rocking chair that was running the shop. My grin dropped away as she sat unmoving. "Hello?" I asked, leaning myself in closer. The brown mare continued to sit completely still, the lacy pink dress she wore giving me no indication on whether or not she was even breathing. "Miss Leek, are you all right?" I reached my hoof out and placed it onto her shoulder, giving her a soft shake. "What now? Seymour, is that you?" She stirred awake, looking around in confusion. Her once blue eyes had dulled softly, sitting unfocused as she blinked and turned her ear for an answer. She was now completely blind, but that wasn't a surprise, as her eyesight had been going for years now. "No, ma'am. My name's Backlash. I'm here to buy something." I gave her a warm smile, which was stupid of me since she couldn't see it. "You aren't Seymour. My husband's been dead for almost a year." She swatted at me with her hoof angrily. "You must be a thief, then." How did she jump to this? "Help! Thief!" Was she using a bit too much of her own product to think clearly anymore? Or was it just her age? Regardless, it was damn annoying that she couldn't recognize I was a customer. "I'm not a thief. I'm just trying to buy something," I shouted back at her, stopping her mid-flail. Of course, this wasn't going to be an easy errand. I just had to go and think maybe I'll get lucky and have a quick task for once. Well, on the bright side, at least she hasn't tried to kill me yet. With how off her train of thought was, however, I wasn't so sure that was off the table. "A customer? Why didn't you say so, then?" She sighed and crossed her forehooves. "I thought I had?" I grumbled, walking past her over to the counter near the back wall. I pushed the dash box aside. First things first is to secure the statue. Then, if I have enough, I'll get the dash as well. I stopped and scrunched on my muzzle as a realization hit me. I was actually planning to buy drugs, and it felt odd. I knew I needed them, but was it because I needed them for the fight? Or because I liked the way that it made me feel back at the pool? I pushed those thoughts aside, seeing as I knew they would not help me against 42, and that I needed to focus on getting this done. "How much for the figurine back there?" I asked, keeping my tone down to a slightly disinterested one. I'll give you 50 caps for it.
Oh, that thing? It's a family heirloom. Had it for generations.
She lied to me. She knew that she had just gotten it. And she was trying to bump up the price on it. That may work on any pony else shopping here, but not me.
I couldn't part with it for any less than...
She thought for a moment.
300 caps?
I can't do that much. I only have 100 on me. I lied this time. I should have around 120 on me.
Sonny, let's quit the fool's play. You know I'm lying. I know you're lying.
She lowered her ears as she spoke. I should have known that her hearing was probably as good as mine, seeing as she didn't have her ears anymore, and it is still doing well for her in this place.
We're both respectable business ponies here.
She stopped for a moment and put her hoof to her chin.
You are a pony, aren't you?
That is correct. I probably let a bit of my hesitation out in those words, but I shouldn't matter. I looked down to myself, looking over my scarred and burnt half.
You say yes, then shake your head no.
She shrugged and began rocking in her chair. How could she have gotten a gesture through the sounds of me moving?
My offer still stands at 300.
I'm sorry, but I don't have that much. Well, this was a disappointment.
I'll pay from it.
The voice of Twain spoke up from around the edge of the stall, his smug smile widening as he looked at me. I thought I saw you in the market. It's good to see you made it up here in one piece. He hoofed out the large leather pouch and tossed it to the old mare. I was just about to head to the bar for a beer. You up for talking about what you want for that little gold key? Yeah, was going to meet up with a friend there anyway. I wrapped the figure in my fetlock and walked from the shop, the gears in my head churning harder as I slipped the pink statuette into my bags. A random thought popped into my head. I might have another job that I could use you in return for it.